you know. So what's interesting is the census data doesn't ask about sexual orientation. But in 1990, it began to include an unmarried partner category. If you look at the first form, it kind of breaks it down for you. Included an unmarried partner category to describe an unrelated partner's relationship to the head of household. And if the head of household designates another adult of the same sex as his or her unmarried partner, or husband and or wife, the census counts the household as a same-sex couple. In addition, the census collects instead of every 10 years, there's also the American Community Survey, a more abbreviated annual survey. Now, these measurements have limitations, obviously, but as with any statistical data. First, unfortunately, it focuses primarily on same-sex couples because of the way that the census asked the question. So we really have very little information about single LGBT people. Also, there are no questions on bisexuality, gender identity, or gender expression. I don't think there are any, there might be, some of you might know, but there are very few, if any, national surveys that ask these types of questions. The other thing about the limitation is that most social scientists, or a lot of social scientists, think there's a very large undercount, just because people are not willing to say in a government forum that they're in a same-sex household. They're also, obviously, people who don't live together, all these sorts of things. So there's a large amount of data that we don't have, but what we have is instructive. In the most recent ACS survey, there were approximately 800,000 gay and lesbian couples who filled out the census, and we had the racial composition of those folks and the economic data on these couples to debunk the white, gay, affluent stereotype, and to offer a more diverse representation of gays and lesbians. So first, the racial and ethnic breakdowns of the U.S. same-sex couples, at least from this data, just briefly, 75% white, 6% African-American, 13% Latino, 3% Asian Pacific Islander, 1% American Indian, Alaska Native, and 2% other. And we'll talk about the racial kind of demographics a little bit, in a couple of minutes. But let's talk about this as a matter of income. The Scalia representation of LGBTs as affluent with high disposable income is clearly inaccurate. So, despite the fact that 40% of same-sex couples have college degrees compared to 27% of their married heterosexual counterparts, in the most recent ACS survey in 2007, the annual earnings of men in same-sex couples are lower than those of married men. On average, men in same-sex couples in the survey earn, as you see in the form, $49,400 each year in comparison to $61,900 for married men. Women in same-sex couples earn an average of $48,000 per year, which is more than their married heterosexual counterparts, who earn an average of $35,000. This is a research paper, folks. When I do this talk, people are usually like, well, what do you think is driving that? I really don't know. I think the social scientists have some ideas or thoughts about it. But it certainly is something to mind in terms of the distinction. But remember that we're talking about this notion of high disposable incomes, that even though lesbians are earning more than their, in same-sex couples are earning more than their heterosexual counterparts, they're still earning, on average, less than married heterosexual men and gay men. So, okay, and then we see an entire different assessment when we factor in race and same-sex couples with children. So, when you look at the racial breakdown, when you see the breakdown from the ACS survey, which is on the next page on personal income, the colored charts, you see lower incomes for people of color in comparison to white same-sex counterparts, and clearly lower than their heterosexual married counterparts of all races. So, for example, when you compare Black and Latino female individuals in same-sex couples to white married heterosexual women, we see that Black and Latino lesbians are making $5,000 on average less, and that Alaska Native and American Indians are making $10,000 less on average. We also see a difference when we look at the families with kids. Really, gay and lesbian families with children. So 20% of gay and lesbian same-sex couples in the survey were raising a child under the age of 18. I think the average is 2 kids. And then we clearly see that the affluent stereotype is not the reality. So first, we see that gays and lesbians of color are raising kids at a higher percentage than their white counterparts, same-sex counterparts. Both white male and female same-sex couples are raising kids at a pretty significant lower rate than other couples of color. And I think that's a statistic we never see, actually. I don't know how often it is that you see any representation in the media or the public of same-sex couples with kids of color. Same-sex, or it's very rare. I think that usually the stereotypical representation